Hi everyone, it's another video today. I have a really cool guest with me from the Gambia, Abdoulie Kurang. He's done a really cool research topic and was super excited to talk to him from the time I realized what he's been studying because it's a topic that's very close to my heart as well, just from a foreign policy point of view. So Abdoulie, please do introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your study.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abdoulie Kurang, and I am currently a PhD student at SOAS University of London through the Mo Ibrahim Fellowship. Actually, in the recent past, I undertook a study that looks at the socio-ecological footprint of ChinaAid in the Gambia. And this research seeks to uncover how aid relates to development aid, particularly ChinaAid, relates to natural resource exploitation by Chinese companies in the country, and specifically making a detailed case study of 3 coastal communities in the Gambia.
So before we go into like the specifics of your research, like what's the context of ChinaAid in Gambia? What has it looked like?
That the Gambia is a very impoverished country, it's a very small country, but has a lot of development potentials in the sense that it has enormous natural resources. You know, you look at Gambia's blue economy. Gambia has abundant supply of fish and other natural resources around the country. So in this sense, you know, the government has kind of entered into several agreements with the Chinese government to support its development agenda. And what we have seen more recently in the country is that China has been providing enormous development support to the country in terms of building roads and also certain other infrastructural projects in the country. So in this sense, I came to develop my research topic around this, trying to understand how Chinese aid links with, let's say, natural resource exploitation, because concurrently also there are a lot of uprisings within the country with regards to the activities of Chinese private companies, particularly the Chinese fish meal companies that are exploiting fish. They are massively fishing the Gambian water bodies and also processing this fish into fish meal, which are later exported to China to feed animals and so on.
Before I get on to more of the findings, if you could tell us a bit about like your methodology, your sample, what were the frameworks you used?
Yes, like I said, my methodology was it was in 2 ways. I relied on theoretical arguments, reviewed some of the literatures that are out there with regards to China-Africa relations, you know, because what I came to realize also, there is little or no literatures on Gambia-China relations.
Right.
So that was a bit difficult for me, but interestingly, I was able to find tons of materials on China-Africa relations. So I was able to make a critical review of some of these literatures on the theoretical lens. And also I was able to make empirical research. And this empirical research had to do with formulating questionnaires and also interviewing individuals in the Gambia. And I interviewed people in different communities where you have the Chinese station fish meal companies, because I want to understand how the presence of these companies has actually affected them socio-economically, and also from the ecological lens, how these companies have affected the ecological landscape in these areas and so on. So what I did is I designed some questionnaires and also interviewed people virtually. That is through WhatsApp calls. Basically, many people have now access to WhatsApp technology. So I called people in the different local communities. I had some people who were very supportive on the ground. So they would go to communities, and also I would call these people and engage them directly. So what I did, I interviewed some activist organizations, because there are a lot of activist organizations in the country that are demanding for social justice, that are demanding for environmental consideration with regards to Chinese investment. So I interviewed these people, and I also interviewed the local communities. Let's say the women fishermen, the fishmongers, the fishermen, and many other different dynamics of the population, so as to give it a wider representation of my study, so on. So I combine these two, that is the theoretical lens, reviewing some literature materials, and also even looking at it from the political ecology lens, because political ecology looks at a very, it looks at the complexity of the political economy of, let's say, environmental degradation, of environmental, and how it links to social uprisings, and how global political economic forces kind of underpins local happenings in this sense.
Right.
Because I try to link this to the global political economic ambition of China with regards to their power struggle with the United States for global hegemony and so on. Right. And also I try to look at it, how China's ambition, like as it is manifested in the One Road, One Belt project. I don't know if you have heard of it, the One Road, One Belt initiative. So because you look at it, you realize that China is trying to invest massively, is investing actually massively in infrastructural projects around the developing world, not just only in Africa, but in Asia, Latin America. So these are all emerging economies around the world. And also, they are also trying to, let's say, promote that cultural diplomacy, trying to propagate the Chinese culture and so on. So I try to look at it from the broader perspective of political ecology, looking at political economy, and looking at the Chinese foreign policy strategy, and how it relates to their aid provision in Africa precisely, looking at the Gambian context.
That's awesome. So we can go straight into your findings. You were talking about three private companies, right? Three private fishing companies that are now in three fishing communities in the Gambia. And you were telling me before that these are actually tourist hotspots as well. So you're looking at the socio-ecological impact of these three companies in these three communities, and you've interviewed them, you've looked at the positives and the negatives. So tell us how you weighed the pros and the cons.
Dynamics, yes. So precisely in my research, I was able to uncover that the investment has provided some positive benefits in terms of creating employment opportunities for some people. It has attracted, let's say, business, in the area due to the high traffic, and a lot of also have resettled. Some people have settled in these communities so as to get employment, in the factory and so on, and also the factory-related activities. So this has been some of the positive impacts, and also obviously that is the positive impact would be the China government support to the broader Gambian government, in terms of providing infrastructural aid and so on, which has been ongoing, definitely.
So you told me about the positives of ChinaAid. So now what about the negatives?
Notes. My research was able to uncover that the presence of the Chinese fish meal companies has resulted to some form of dispossession of the locals from their traditional craft of fishing in this coastal. So with the presence of the Chinese companies, they also come up with it's also accompanied by this very big Chinese fishing trawlers. So this has affected the presence of fish in the water body. Some locals have complained that they go to fishing, they go for fishing, and they wouldn't find any fish at sea because all the fish is being caught. So with the little canoes that they have, they cannot compete with these massive fishing trawlers. And these people depend on fishing, let's say, this traditional subsistence fishing method to meet their livelihood options. So this has become a big problem for some of these fishermen. And in relation also, these fishermen have also depended a lot on the Chinese fish meal companies, because when they caught fish, they would supply directly instead of like meeting the local needs, the locals, their fish demands and so on, they directly supply these fish meal companies, sorry, because these fish meal companies pay better price for the fish than the locals themselves. So this has resulted to some form of dependency between the fishermen, the local fishermen, and the companies. And in this sense, you like that the local, when the Chinese stop buying fish, the local fishermen would just go and dump all the fish at sea because they do not have any kind of storage or processing facilities. And this has also resulted to the skyrocketing of fish prices in these communities because locals, they can't afford it, considering that these are all impoverished societies, communities, these are all impoverished local communities. So they do not have the financial muscle to pay the same amount as the private fish meal factories that are in these communities. So this has resulted to some form of, social uprising and so on. Some people demanding for the closure of the factory, and some of the uprising have resulted to even the arrest of some individuals in the communities and so on. So this has resulted to this kind of tension in the community. Notwithstanding also, you realize that let's say these fish meal activities, because of the revenue that has been generated by working by transporting fish from the local fishermen to the fish meal companies, like that the very, very small children have also engaged in this kind of business. So you like that it has resulted to the escalation of child labor in these areas, because like that small children, instead of even going to school, as one of the interviews told me, instead of going to school, they prefer to go to the business activity area, whereby they can easily transport fish from the fishermen to the companies, and they are paid, certain amount, which is very meager, and to meet some of their needs. So this has resulted to some kind of child labor, and also it has affected, let's say, the schooling of many small children in the area. So these are some of the, let's say, the social challenges that are emerging out of the communities. So on the ecological aspect, this is a very summative view of everything. So on the ecological aspect, you realize that, the fish meal companies, they do not also have proper waste processing mechanisms in place. So what they do is the remains from the fish meal processing is kind of dumped at sea, or is dumped at a particular area, which is later fermented, which later ferments, and it kind of pollutes the air, with a very, very bad odor. And this has affected the locals in many ways. At night, the air pollution is so horrible that people cannot stay outside. People have to go inside their houses to seek refuge. And also in the sense that when the process is happening, when the fish is being processed into fish meal, you realize that the smell, the bad odor that comes from the processing plants, from these fish meal factories, it makes the village to be so horribly, smelly that people cannot just stay outside. So these are all challenges that have been taken up by some local activist organizations in the area. They have engaged the government, they have engaged the environment ministry and so on, but still now nothing has been done about some of these things. At some point, some of the Chinese factories were fined to pay a particular amount due to the unregulated nature of their waste disposal to the environment. And after that, some of these things have still been ongoing. So even after some of this finding and the closure of some factory, one of the factories, I think is the one in Sanyang, if I can recall, at some point it was temporarily closed due to its improper management and disposal of waste in the area.
Wow.
So these are some of the challenges that have emerged out of this study. And yeah.
Wow. So you were also saying that these fishing communities are actually tourist hotspots, isn't it? And now that
yes,
economy around tourism is affected as well.
Yes, yes. So naturally in the Gambia, you would understand that, these coastal communities are also tourist attraction areas,
Right.
So this coastal communities, particularly that of Katong, you realize that besides fishing, farming, they also engage in ecotourism activities.
Right.
Yearly they attract tourists in their massive numbers. So with the presence of these fish meal factories and also the dumping of, let's say, fish remains at sea and so on, with the, so it has made the environment to be very unattractive for tourism activities. And also the smell that comes out of the fish meal plants has made it very, very inconvenient for locals and even for tourists to visit, to stay in these areas. So this has affected the tourism industry. All in all, it's like, like I said, the negative impacts are far-reaching and they are more enormous than the positive impacts of these fish meal plants.
The tough one. So what about the implications, especially policy-wise?
So I suggested that there should be local participation in resource-based investments, because from a theoretical perspective, I believe that local participation would greatly engender local ownership and sustainability of development projects. Local participation in the sense that, people should be involved at all stages when this kind of resource-based investments are brought to their communities. Because some, let's say, predominantly the youthful population of the community, they want these factories to go, because they believe that it is bringing more harmful impact to their community than good. But the elders, and particularly, let's say, the local elites, they want this factory. They believe that this factory is bringing a lot of benefit. And apparently, my research was also able to uncover that these local elites, they receive some kind of allowance from the Chinese. This is monthly allowance that the Chinese factories pay to these local elites. So it's kind of, it has brought about, let's say, the Chinese strategy is some kind of that divide and rule strategy. That is, they align themselves with the locals and the government, and also now they are conquering the community. So these are some of the implications that I try to profile with regards to local participation, because I believe, and also one of the policy implications that I suggested is the empowerment of the Gambia's environmental agencies, be it the Ministry of Fisheries and being the National Environment Agency. Because I believe that these agencies, if they are empowered enough, they'll be able to make critical research onto some of the challenges some of the ecological challenges that this kind of investments are bringing into the environment. So because of the fact that I was able to understand that even some of these agencies depend heavily on the research that is conducted by independent and international bodies. So they do not have, let's say, the resources or the technologies to be able to make their own independent research to understand what are some of the challenges that comes with this kind of investments. So I believe this will go a long way in trying to, bring about the much needed environmental regulations to make sure that resource-based investments do not come with ecological challenges in local communities.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. There's so much to take from this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you.
And we can continue this discussion another time.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So everybody, thanks for watching. I hope you had a really good time listening to insights and lessons from the Gambia. As Sri Lankans, of course, there's a lot for us to take from this. So thank you, Abdoulie. If anybody wants to get in touch with Abdoulie, he has offered to be available. You can write to mthesis.series@gmail.com. I will insert the email address at the bottom. So thanks again, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.